Hello everyone and welcome back to another round of Tuesday Night Legacy where we showcase Magic's most powerful formats. My name's Eugene and I'll be your commentator for this round 1 from April 19th. We have a Delver list versus a Delverless Delver list. Delver, of course, being the top deck in the format right now. We're seeing quite a bit of it at the store. We have Fred on the right running the blue-red Delver list with Delver in it. Of course, Delver Secret's turning into the 3-2 flyer, and it's backed up basically all of these win conditions. The Murktide Regent, the Dragon's Rage Channeler, a couple of Brazen Borrowers, is protected by things like Daze, Force of Will, and everything else in the deck is designed to find it with Expressive Iteration, Mishra's Bauble, Ponder, Brainstorm, things like that. Dragon's Rage Channeler really shining in a matchup like this just because it's constantly generating additional value whenever you cast any of these extra spells. Whereas we have Max playing the Delverless version, and he has abandoned the vanilla 3-2 flyer for a Snapcaster Mage and a couple more Brazen Borrowers, trying to slot in the vanilla creature with a couple of creatures with utility, as well as sneaking in a couple of these predicts here that work really well with being able to know what the top card of your library is. Let's go ahead and get started. We have Fred on the play here. He's already done turn 1 Dragon's Rage Channeler. Getting this guy to stick is a big deal, as it's going to generate, like I said before, a ton of value off of that Surveil trigger. Max, definitely knowing that already, decides to fire off the Lightning Bolt, get it out as soon as possible. No second turn play from Fred, so we just see a Ponder from Max and pass it back. Fred, very deliberate with his plays, trying to make sure that he is going to take the correct line as often as possible. Going to see the Expressive Iteration, not playing around Daze. Little does he know that Max only plays 2 Dazes here, so not as often as you'd think. Having the Wasteland come down, get one of the Volcanic Islands on Max's side, keeping his mana under control a little bit. Ooh, seeing a Lightning Bolt off of this Ponder here. A lot of cards in the grave already. Setting up for a early Murktide Regent, probably. I see a Mishra's Bauble go to the grave as well. Having 4 card types in the grave is also useful for the Dragon's Rage Channeler. Getting that Delirium online, making it a 3-3. Getting it out of range of 2 damage spells. Still dies to Lightning Bolt, though. Another Expressive Iteration from Fred. This is just such a powerhouse of a card. Getting to have access to 2 cards off of 2 mana and getting rid of a 3rd card. Kind of getting the chaff off the top of the deck. With that Ponder resolved, we see a Force of Will in Fred's hand. So I think he's kind of playing it more of a control style than the tempo style, or he doesn't have access to one of those threats to stick. He's just trying to keep Max off of his game plan. See an Expressive Iteration on his side as well, Max's side. Oops. Mishra's Bauble checking the top card of Fred's library. Yeah, not seeing any threats on either side of the board. Kind of a draw a bunch of cards go scenario here. Maybe they're both trying to threaten the threat of counter spells, as one of these decks needs to stick a threat in order to advance this game state. I mean, we still see we're like 6 turns into the game and it's still 17-20. And I think all of that damage has been taken off of fetches. 3 out of the 4 Volcanic Islands in Fred's deck are in play. I think he runs a couple extra Steam Vents as well. As we've talked before, the Delver deck is very, very mana hungry and wants access to both blue and red pips at any given time. Seeing a Mystic Sanctuary, putting the top card, or putting one of the cards from the graveyard onto the top of the deck. I think he went for the Ponder there. So we're seeing a Murktide Regent and a Dragon's Rage Channeler being fired off here for 3 mana. Very, very good plays. Very mana efficient. Seeing the predict. Oh, it was an Expressive Iteration. So the response predict to putting Expressive Iteration on top of the deck. That was pretty good. being able to mill the expressive iteration, thereby completely negating the value from that Mystic Sanctuary, getting to draw 2 cards because of it. And we're seeing an Unholy Heat dealing 6 damage to the Murktide Regent. Efficiency is met with efficiency here in this match. Getting rid of threats and value as soon as it presents itself. Although not being able to deal with this other Dragon's Rage Chandler, still just a 1/1. Max not actually having a threat to deploy yet, using all of his resources to deal with Fred's threats. So we will see what happens here. Brainstorm still resolving for Fred. Another land. Another fetch. Looks like he's got at least a Lightning Bolt in hand. And that's going to be the 4th Volcanic Island. No more of those in the deck. Seeing 1 damage. Sorcery, instant. Oh, no, that is Delirium. I think that other card is actually a Bauble in the grave. Going to see a Lightning Bolt. Swiftly dealing with the Dragon's Rage Channeler, the second one of the game. Max finally deploying a threat here on turn 8. Murktide Regent looks like he's going for the full suite. Oh, no, decides at the last second to only do 4. Ooh, and in response, once it's entered the battlefield, we see the Petty Theft off of the Brazen Borrower coming down here. It is going to try to be contested with the Force of Will out of Max's hand. We see a Force of Will right back out of Fred's hand. So Murktide Regent will return to hand. Brazen Borrower on an adventure. Fred deploying his own second Murktide Regent. Comes in with 6 counters. I don't know if he meant to do that or it's represented as a 6/6 here with 3 counters. There we go. We see Max making the same play here, using the Mystic Sanctuary's ability to put the Expressive Iteration back on top of the deck. Casting a Snapcaster Mage. Going to Unholy Heat, flash it back since Delirium is still active. Getting rid of another Murktide Regent. You know, it's really difficult to make a threat stick here as I think Max has kind of built his deck to deal with the mirror. See a Ponder go off for Fred. And fire off a Lightning Bolt, 3 damage, straight to the dome. Oh, that's interesting. Dazing his own Lightning Bolt and paying for it so he can get the Mystic Sanctuary back so that he can play it and put the Lightning Bolt back on top of the library. Mystic Sanctuary technically is an island, so you can use Daze to return it to your hand and get maximum value off of that Mystic Sanctuary. I guess Fred deciding here that direct damage is going to be the best way to go about this win. Having a Lightning Bolt wait for him on top of his deck. Basically having Max at an effective 5. Only needs to find 2 more Lightning Bolts in order to end the game here. Max saying, I'm not done yet. Throws down Dragon Rage Chandler, Ponder, Surveil. Trying to just generate as much value as possible. See a Ponder from Fred. Definitely puts that Lightning Bolt in hand. Expressive Iteration. Just digging so deep into the deck. Fred knows exactly what he wants here. Exiling the Brainstorm so that he can go even deeper. Another Brainstorm in hand. And he goes for the Ponder. I think that's what, 4 cantrips is all the mana that he has for this turn have been just 1 mana cantrips. Ooh, this is presenting lethal here. This is basically Fred's last turn. 6 damage, 7, 8, and just an absurd amount of damage here from the Murktide Regent. We see another Daze paid for so he could return the Mystic Sanctuary. Fred tapping 1 blue. Nope. Decides Still got that Sanctuary. He's going to return that Lightning Bolt to the top of the deck. I think this is the second one, so I think he's really close. Decides to draw the Lightning Bolt, of course. A Brainstorm. Oh, and that's a Chain Lightning. That's all 3 he needs. Oh, 9 damage. Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning. And that is the end of game 1. Chain Lightning, a 1 of. I guess not in this list. But definitely in Fred's list, he has that Chain Lightning. Sometimes you just need 5 Lightning Bolts. And this was a good example of when that needs to happen. Here we are on the second turn of game 2. See that Brainstorm? Man, I can't get over that. Had to find that last Lightning Bolt off of that threat, or off of that trigger, and he got it. All right, Fred deploying the Dragon's Rage Channeler, kind of the first thing that's happened this game. Ooh. And we see Max with the Counterbalance. So we saw this card a lot back when Sensei's Divining Top was a card that you could play in Legacy. In Blue-White Miracles, being able to control the top card of your library and being able to counter basically anything that the opponent had at a given time, kind of resetting your library for 1 mana. So we're going to see a Counterbalance trigger. With that Counterbalance trigger on the stack, we're seeing a Brainstorm in response. So all Max has to do is put something that's 2 CMC on top of the deck, gets countered, has his own expressive iteration that he reveals. The Dragon's Rage Channeler is online. Ooh, we're seeing a reset from Max, knowing that it's a 2 CMC card on top, decides to do the fetch, and he's going for another Brainstorm. So more than likely he has something in his hand that's CMC 1. And that'll counter this Ponder as well. Yeah, Ponder for Ponder. So we're seeing the Surveil trigger here being resolved from Fred. It's going to be a Daze, decides to put it in the grave, and attacks for 3. Dragon's Rage Channeler, threatening to end the game in 5 turns if left unanswered. A Bauble for digging through the deck, getting a little bit of extra information, adding to Delirium. Passing the turn back to Fred. Pretty low on mana. Just a blind Counterbalance trigger there, hoping for a 2 cost, but it was a 1 cost Pyroblast. Expressive Iteration gets to resolve here. Exiling that land, getting into play. We see Fred with his own Counterbalance. So this is now a Counterbalance war. Every spell getting to have to check that trigger. Murktide Regent. A 7 cost. The only card in Fred's deck that is going to be able to counterbalance this is his own Murktide Regent. Looks like Fred didn't even want to check the top of his library. That's interesting. Or no, I think we might have known what it was. They just didn't show it. Brazen Borrower. No counterbalance trigger. Just a land off the top. Bouncing Murktide back to hand. Shrinking the grave even more. Oh, this is interesting. So we're seeing a fetch, and in response to that fetch, another fetch, putting Mystic Sanctuary into play, putting Brainstorm on top of the deck, I guess to stop Max from being able to Brainstorm himself to save that Murktide Regent. Fred kind of getting ahead of him with the triggers there. A very good play in response. See Fred's own Murktide Regent come down. Checking his grave. Want to make sure that he doesn't dig himself out of Delirium, but had enough instants and sorceries that he got the full 5 counters onto Murktide Regent. Max in kind of a tough spot here. Taking damage from that DRC every turn. Was able to deal with it with the Brazen Borrower. Casting the Petty Theft. I'm not entirely certain if Fred just doesn't want to do these counterbalance triggers or if he's missing them. But that petty theft did resolve. Max checking his blind counterbalance. And a lightning bolt for the Dragon's Rage Channeler. And another blind counterbalance on Fred's side, both of them having lands on top of their deck. Before this brainstorm resolves, it's always the best time to fire off your instant before they have access to see another 3 cards. Murktide coming down after being petty thefted last turn. Max knowing he has a land on top of his deck, there's no reason to re-show it for his counterbalance. And we're casting the Brazen Borrower, who is on an adventure. Looks like that Murktide, yep, came down as a 5/5. 2 mana. His own Murktide deployed. Now we know that Fred had brainstormed, so he knew that Max had the Murktide region in hand, so he set up the top of his library to be able to counterbalance that Murktide if Max decided to go for it, which he did here. Kind of ensuring a victory. Thanks again for joining us for this round of Tuesday Night Legacy. If you want to see the deck list, they are in the description of the channel. I want to say a big thank you to Spellhold Games for allowing us to film these on their property. The greatest LGS there is. And the next round is going to be a black-white Parhelion combo versus black and white Death and Taxes. We'll see you then.